Cubs team. That's a Cubs team that I fully believe will be representing the National League Central in the postseason this year. I don't think that there's a strong challenger to the Cubs, and I thought the Giants hung with them every step of the way, even on Tuesday night, when Ryan Walker and Eric Miller combined to give up the lead in the ninth inning and spoiled Justin Verlander his opportunity at picking up his first win in a Giants uniform. I was really impressed by the resilience of the offense, coming back a 9-run 11th inning. Eric Miller shutting down the Chicago Cubs in the 10th. And, of course, our first glimpse of Kyle Harrison this season in the 11th. 2 strikeouts, a really impressive showing in his first career performance out of the bullpen. I mean, this is a Kyle Harrison, young De La Salle product who pitched just in the rotation throughout high school, pitched as a starter throughout the minor leagues, was a starter when he first came up to the major league level, and he showed the Giants something out of the bullpen on Tuesday night. And then Friday night in Minnesota, he comes out and throws 2 innings, 3 walks, but 3 strikeouts as well. And I really thought that the fastball, the velocity, the uptick that we've seen, it just looks like a different pitch from what I saw during spring training in Scottsdale. And we all remember that Kyle Harrison started spring training Cactus League play about a week behind Hayden Birdsong and Landon Roop, the other pitchers who were competing for that 5th job in the Giants rotation. He was a week behind because it had been a difficult offseason physically. He wasn't bouncing back as well. He got sick right before spring training, and it forced him to kind of step back, step away for just a few days, stop throwing. And so what that meant is that he just wasn't ramped up and ready to go by the time the Giants were really seriously evaluating things through the middle of Cactus League play. And it led Bob Melvin at the end of spring training, when the Giants were deciding on their 5th starter and ultimately Landon Roop would win that job, it led Bob Melvin to say, Harrison was never really in this competition. So they sent him down to AAA Sacramento, a relatively surprising development, given that you would have anticipated Harrison would have been the 5th starter coming out of spring training at the very beginning of Cactus League play. But he goes down to AAA Sacramento, and he pitches very well out of the rotation. Last 2 weeks, there was a noticeable uptick in the fastball velocity. There's been a change in release point for Kyle Harrison that has been very, very important in terms of his ability to regain that velocity and his ability to really fool hitters. He's getting extension with that pitch, and you're seeing guys swinging late. 96-97 from the left side is not easy, and it's a deceptive 96-97 right now. The Giants saw that on Friday evening against the Minnesota Twins as Harrison picked up 3 strikeouts in relief. They saw it on Tuesday evening against the Chicago Cubs as Harrison threw that scoreless 11th inning. But the Giants, through the first few innings of last night's ball game, had Jordan Hicks going. And Hicks, 7 hits allowed, 3 runs allowed. I think there are open questions as to how long they will stick with Jordan Hicks in the rotation. And you look at last night's start, it's not a bad start. It's a quality start by the metric standpoint. 6 innings, 3 runs, 7 hits, no walks, 6 strikeouts. That is, by definition, in Major League Baseball, a quality start. But I think on the minds of Giants fans right now is the optimum potential for this rotation. The optimal potential, I should say, for this Giants rotation. You think about what this rotation could be in July and August and September as they chase a playoff spot. And you see the results through the first 8 starts of this 2025 season for Jordan Hicks. And he's 1-4. He's got a 5.82 ERA. And he's consistently fallen behind in games early. And now, yesterday's game might have looked different had the Giants' offense had any semblance of a rhythm against the Minnesota Twins. It didn't. Chris Paddock came into yesterday's game with an ERA hovering around 6. He shut the Giants down for 7 1/3 innings, 3 hits allowed, no walks. The Giants looked hopeless up there against the former top prospect in the Padres system who had had a really difficult start to the year, but somehow, some way, found it against the San Francisco Giants on Friday. He turned into a soft contact king, just 6 strikeouts over 7 1/3 innings. The Giants did not hit a ball harder than 104 miles an hour on Friday night. They just didn't make good contact against Paddock, and that's reflected in the stat line. The only extra base hit of the game was Matt Chapman's home run in the 7th inning, and of course that was the home run that ultimately forced the Minnesota Twins to go to their bullpen, and then from that point forward, the Giants didn't have a base runner. So you're looking at a game that was a 3-1 defeat for the Giants, disappointing loss, but also a game where Jordan Hicks actually showed some signs of improvement. Kyle Harrison, solid out of the bullpen, giving the Giants more reason to believe that he can be an important part of this staff in 2025, and a game that opens up the recurring questions that we have about this Giants lineup, the recurring questions that we have about will this offense be good enough It was good enough on Tuesday, scoring 9 runs in the 11th inning against the Chicago Cubs. It was good enough on Wednesday to win a low-scoring game against the Cubs. Robbie Ray winning for the 8th consecutive start to open the season. He's, 5-0 in those 8 starts, and the Giants have won all 8 of them. Meanwhile, this is an offense that for 2-3 weeks has cooled off considerably from the hot start that you saw at the beginning of the season. And you see the lineup that the Giants have thrown out there against the Minnesota Twins yesterday and today. And I'll tell you, a lot of OPSs in the low 700s, high 600s. Patrick Bailey, his OPS dipped under 500 with another disappointing performance at the plate on Friday, 0 for 3 with the strikeout. And I hate saying it like this, but the reality is this is a team that needs Jerar Encarnacion to come back from the injured list and needs him to provide some thump in the middle of the order. Because right now, the Giants are lacking that thump at first base, where Lamont Wade Jr., his OPS on the season is down to 512. I'm not sure how much longer the Giants can legitimately put up with Wade over at first base if the OPS is 512. They've given him consistent playing time. They've given him every opportunity, and really, there are no other options. Encarnacion's on the injured list. Flores isn't someone they want to put out at first base every day. Bryce Eldridge is down in AA, not AAA. There's no imminent call-up, nor should there be for a top prospect who's still about a year away. So what do you do at first base? When Jerar Encarnacion begins his rehab assignment, he's due back around May 23rd. That's when he's eligible to come off the 60-day injured list. You have to play him at first base down at AAA every single day. Because the other option on the Giants roster is David Villar, who has proven that he can be a solid 7 or 8 hitter against left-handed pitchers, who's proven that he can handle the fastball in the major leagues, but not the breaking ball. But this is someone who the Giants were willing to jettison off of their 40-man roster at the end of spring training. And this is someone who found his way back to their 40-man roster after he cleared waivers, which means none of the other 29 teams in the major leagues wanted VR on their 40-man roster. So VR clears waivers, goes down to AAA Sacramento 3 weeks later because of the injury situation. He's back in the big leagues, and all of a sudden, he is the Giants' best hope for offense at the first base position, a position where most good teams have a really productive player. You know, you look around Major League Baseball, and let's say, you go down to Los Angeles with the Dodgers. Freddie Freeman, 35 years old, still hitting over 300. You look at the Yankees in the American League East. Paul Goldschmidt, over 35 years old, still hitting over 300. I mean, there are players who have aged really well and gracefully in the game of baseball. And the Giants, since Brandon Belt ultimately left the Toronto Blue Jays, just have not been able to replace his production over at first base. And it is now hurting this lineup actively. It's a position where they never drafted well. And it's a position where they have not been able to acquire a free agent. And so they were leaning on Lamont Wade Jr. coming into this season. He hasn't given them anything offensively. They were hoping that Jerar Encarnacion might be an option there, but he was playing some outfield during spring training. That's actually how Encarnacion got hurt. He was playing the outfield, dove for a ball, and the guy comes up with a finger injury. So how much is he going to be able to give them defensively over at first base, and is that going to outweigh the offensive considerations? I think there are a number of issues with this Giants team right now that are really, really going to come to light over the next few weeks because the Giants will be playing a softer schedule. Theoretically, the Minnesota Twins are a team that they should beat up on. Now, they could go in, they could roll that same formula that they used in Chicago, lose the opener, and then win the series. They've got a good chance to do so because today it's Logan Webb. And Logan Webb always gives the Giants a great opportunity to win. First inning on the road, a little difficult. But I do think this Minnesota Twins offense is one that can be pitched to. I don't think that Minnesota's lineup right now is anything to write home about. And in fact, at 19 and 24th place in the American League Central, there are big picture questions with the roster construction for Minnesota as well. So very much looking forward to today's Giants warm-up show. We will preview today's ball game. We will look at Logan Webb. We will take a closer look at last night's starter Jordan Hicks, what's not working for him. I'll have my friend Roger Munter stop by. We tape the K-Raj podcast every month. We've got a new episode out, so very much looking forward to having Roger on today's show on Giants warm-up. And then we will look around Major League Baseball, some scores from Friday evening, some scores already from games in action on the East Coast this afternoon. We'll look around at the National League West and everything going on around Major League Baseball. On the other side, would love to take your phone calls if you're interested. 415-808-KNBR. We are rolling here on Giants baseball on the afternoon. First pitch, I believe it's coming your way around 4:15 Pacific time from Target Field in Minnesota. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.
Here it comes. Chapman, it's a high drive left field. Back Bader, and gone! Matt Chapman puts the Giants on the board. His 8th home run of the year. This game is not over. It's 3-1 Twins in the 7th.
107.5, 418 feet. Absolute no-doubter.
While Bob Melvin preps the men in orange and black, we'll prep you for today's ball game as our Giants warm-up continues on the Sports Leader.
We are back here on Giants Warm-Up. Kerry Crowley getting you set for Giants baseball, a fantastic pitching matchup on Saturday afternoon coming your way from Target Field. It's the Giants' ace, Logan Webb, up against the right-hander Joe Ryan, the Bay Area's own Joe Ryan, going for the Minnesota Twins today. Ryan, of course, a Sir Francis Drake product over in Marin, and then he continued his career. He was actually drafted by the San Francisco Giants, 39th round of the 2014 Major League Baseball draft out of Sir Francis Drake High School. And how about this? He didn't sign, but ultimately played college baseball at Cal State University of Northridge, and then he transferred to Stanislaus State, and then became a 7th round draft pick in 2018 by the Minnesota Twins. I have to say, if he was playing baseball over at Drake, and he was a Giants draft pick in 2014. He stays local in California, not, of course, in Northern California down at Northridge, but comes back closer to the San Francisco Giants at Stanislaus. He ultimately could have been a Giants draft pick, and the fact that they didn't take him in that 2018 draft, maybe a miss for the San Francisco Giants, because you look at his major league career, 35-28 in terms of the win-loss record, a 3.84 ERA, very solid, 572 strikeouts over the course of his career, just 28 years old. Joe Ryan's a good pitcher, and the Giants could very much use those type of guys in their farm system coming up and being good major league players. And I think they missed one here. They ultimately had the right analysis on him back in 2014 coming out of high school, which, by the way, the same year that Logan Webb was drafted out of high school as well. Logan Webb, the 4th round draft pick for the Giants that year out of Rockland, and he ultimately did sign with the San Francisco Giants, made his major league debut in 2019, and the rest has been history for Logan Webb, who's taken over as the staff ace, has received Cy Young votes in each of the last 3 seasons and hoping to make it 4 in a row. For the Giants, Logan Webb has been very, very solid, but they've also received important contributions from Robbie Ray and Justin Verlander over the last few weeks. Jordan Hicks yesterday, as we mentioned, had a quality start, but it wasn't exactly the kind of awe-inspiring start that you thought you might get from Jordan Hicks when you first saw him pitching out of the Giants rotation in 2024. It was Farhan Zaidi who ultimately signed Jordan Hicks, the 4-year, $44 million deal, when he became a free agent. Had spent the first portion of his career in the Cardinals bullpen. He became a free agent last winter, and he wanted the opportunity to be a starting pitcher in the major leagues. Always felt like he deserved that opportunity. Cardinals tried to give it to him once, but it was really kind of a half-hearted effort by St. Louis, and so he went seeking that type of a deal last offseason. The Giants were the team in position to give it to him. And when we saw Jordan Hicks during the first half of the 2024 season, we saw a pitcher with, in my opinion, 3+ pitches. It was the fastball, it was the sweeper, and it was the splitter, a pitch that he used about 20% of the time in 2024. What I noticed during spring training, and really some of those early starts, I go back to the exhibition game that Jordan Hicks threw right before the 2024 season against the A's, where I think he racked up like 10 strikeouts in 5 innings. The splitter was dancing. It was a pitch that was working for Jordan Hicks last year. And over the course of the season, he seemed to use it less and less. And you go back and you look at last night's outing for Jordan Hicks against the Minnesota Twins, and he throws the fastball 68% of the time. Excuse me, that was Kyle Harrison throwing the fastball 68% of the time. He throws the sinker 48% of the time. He throws the sweeper 39% of the time. The four-seam fastball, 9% of the time. So that's a fastball with the sinker and the four-seamer about 55, 60% of the time. And then he threw just 3 splitters last night. 3 splitters, threw them all to left-handed hitters. And to me, this is a missed opportunity for the Giants. Because if Jordan Hicks is really going to be a 2-pitch guy, which he's given that indication over the last few weeks, and especially with last night's outing against Minnesota, throwing the vast majority of times the sinker and the sweeper, isn't that bullpen material? Guys with 2 pitches, they're relievers. Guys with 3 pitches, they are starters. Jordan Hicks right now only has confidence in throwing 2 pitches. And I don't know if this is something that Giants R&D or Giants Analytics or Giants pitching coach J.D. Martinez is responsible for. J.P. Martinez, I should say, not J.D. Martinez, the old slugger. But if you're going to be throwing 2 pitches on a regular basis and not mixing in a third, not keeping hitters off balance, I think you ought to take a serious look at using Hicks out of the bullpen, because the Giants have a couple of pitchers in Hayden Birdsong and now Kyle Harrison coming up to the big leagues who I think offer them a little bit more. You know, last night in his 2 innings, Kyle Harrison, he threw the changeup 3 times. It was just 2 innings. So you would figure over the course of, 5, 6 as a starter, you'd get 10 to 15 changeups. He's still going to be fastball dominant. The slurve looks better right now for Kyle Harrison than it's looked, but he seems to be more of a 3-pitch guy, even if he doesn't trust the changeup all that much, than Jordan Hicks is right now. And then, of course, there's Hayden Birdsong, who's a true 4-pitch guy. Fastball, curveball, slider, change. Hayden Birdsong is able to throw each of those 4 pitches and does seem comfortable throwing each of those 4 pitches in any count. And so when you've got a 4-pitch guy in the bullpen, it's only a matter of time before you use him in the rotation. Then the other dilemma the Giants are facing, the pitcher who will throw tomorrow's series finale in Minnesota, is Landon Roop. And Landon Roop is someone who has that excellent curveball, really one of the best pitches in Major League Baseball. The curveball that Landon Roop throws is dynamic. The challenge for Roop, he doesn't really have a second pitch that he trusts. He's got a sinker, he's got a cutter, he's got a changeup. He's used all 3 of those pitches this season. The issue is that all 3 of those pitches have gotten hit around pretty hard. And so when none of them are effective, and when he's forced to throw the curveball about 50+% of the time, more than any other pitcher in Major League Baseball is throwing their curveball, he becomes predictable. And so I look at Roop right now as more of a 2-inning guy out of the bullpen. I look at Jordan Hicks as someone who during the second half of this 2025 season is probably more of a 2-inning guy out of the Giants bullpen. And I know that Hicks wanted to be a starter. I know that Farhan Zaidi signed him as a starter. But if he's not throwing that third pitch, the splitter, if he's not throwing it effectively, or in the case of last night's game, where he threw it just 3 times, he's not throwing it at all, that to me suggests he should be in the bullpen. And you should give a Hayden Birdsong or a Kyle Harrison the opportunity to pitch out of the rotation. And I'm not saying, sitting here on Saturday, May 10th, that the Giants need to make these changes imminently. In fact, I think the longer they can hold off these changes, the better off this team will be. If you are in a situation where June 1st, July 1st roll around, and you're able to keep Hicks and Roop in the rotation, that will ultimately build the innings that Harrison and Birdsong have available to them up for July, August, September, potentially October. Because I don't think any of these pitchers who I've just discussed, in Hicks, in Roop, in Birdsong, and Harrison, are really at this juncture of their respective careers, in all different junctures, capable of throwing more than about 140 innings in a given calendar year. So what the Giants, I believe, are doing right now are trying to get the most out of Jordan Hicks and Landon Roop. And then some point in the middle of the season, probably not this month, probably not right now, unless they go on a long losing skid, we'll make the change. We'll go with Birdsong. We'll go with Harrison. And we'll ride the guys who have better stuff. And I do believe that Harrison, with the fastball velocity that he has shown out of the bullpen, has better stuff right now than, say, a Landon Roop. And I do believe that Hayden Birdsong, with 4 true pitches, as opposed to Jordan Hicks, who's using 2 real pitches right now with his sinker and sweeper, has significantly better stuff. Now, Hicks has the veteran know-how. I think that he's got some better pitch ability in certain circumstances. But Birdsong's confidence, man, it's not shaken. I know he had the tough outing against the Cubs earlier this week. I know it wasn't what he was wanting. Of course, returning to Wrigley Field, the ballpark that he used to go to as a kid. It's a great story in the San Francisco Standard this week from John Shea, detailing Wrigley Field, Wrigleyville, and Hayden Birdsong, kind of at the center of that. What makes that ballpark so special? But I think that it was a blow-up. I think that it was a rare blow-up. And I think that over the course of this 2025 season, 162 games, the Giants will be better off if during the second half of the year, the pitchers with the better stuff in Birdsong and in Harrison are in the rotation. The pitchers who look more like they're 2-pitch guys in Hicks and Roop, and he needs to decide on that second pitch. Maybe it's the cutter, maybe it's the sinker. I think it's probably the sinker, but he can be curveball dominant if they're pitching out of the bullpen. So just some thoughts on where the Giants stand right now, because obviously they don't want to mess with the front end of the rotation. Logan Webb, he's your ace. He's your Cy Young candidate. He's going today for the Giants. They're not going to mess with Justin Verlander, who's given them some very good outings last few times out. And Robbie Ray has just regained the form the Giants anticipated he would back when Farhan Zaidi made the trade with the Seattle Mariners, offloading the contracts that were ill-advised to Mitch Haniger and Anthony DeSclafani, and picking up Robbie Ray in what very well could have been an ill-advised trade. If Robbie Ray opts into that deal, which he did last offseason, 2 years, $50 million, what the Giants owe him over the course of 2025 and 2026, and he's not able to regain the form that he showed prior to Tommy John surgery, that's a really bad deal. The Giants are just trading sunken cost for sunken cost. But so far this season, he's pitched 8 games. The Giants have won all 8 of them. It's a huge reason why this team is 9 games over 500 right now, heading into today's matchup against the Minnesota Twins. So very eager to see what the Giants can get out of Robbie Ray, Justin Verlander, and Logan Webb moving forward, and very eager to see when Buster Posey, Zach Manassi, and Bob Melvin start discussing some tweaks to the rotation that I view as inevitable. I don't know that they view them as inevitable. I think that they would like to ride this out as long as possible. And look, if Roop suddenly develops that cutter, that changeup, and those become better pitches for him, maybe they never have to take him out of the rotation. But I think right now, with the stuff that he has, the arsenal that he has at his disposal, he's probably better as a 2-inning guy as opposed to a 5-6 inning guy. And the same is true of Jordan Hicks. Right now, they're just trying to ride him out as long as possible. And he did get through 6 innings on Friday night. He has been, at times this season, more economical with his pitch count than I would have anticipated. He still got the velocity up to 100 miles an hour last night. The problem for Jordan Hicks is that when he becomes a 2-pitch guy, he becomes a lot more predictable. So that velocity that he has isn't all that special. You know, last night he's able to throw 100.5 miles an hour with that sinker. The slowest sinker that he threw against the Minnesota Twins on Friday evening was 96. He averaged 98.5 miles per hour, which was up 1.3 over his yearly average. That's really good, right? Well, when you dig deeper into the numbers, hitters swung at 16 of those sinkers. Just 2 of those sinkers were whiffed. So you've got a scenario where Jordan Hicks is not missing bats with his best pitch, and he's not throwing that third offering in the splitter. So I don't know when the Giants are going to make this change. I don't know if it's realistic to start considering it in May. I read Susan Slusher's story in the San Francisco Chronicle. It doesn't sound as if Bob Melvin wants to consider it, but just some food for thought there. So Giants baseball on the radio today. The Giants going with Logan Webb, their staff ace, becoming a true 4-pitch guy right now. He's mixing in the cutter with that sinker, with that slider, with that changeup. Logan Webb has been so fun to watch this season. He'll go up against the Bay Area's own Joe Ryan, always someone who wants to beat the San Francisco Giants. So I think that we were in for a fantastic pitching matchup this afternoon. Really looking forward to this game between the Giants and the Twins after, let's be honest, let's call spade a spade, kind of a dud on Friday evening. They got that game out of the way really quickly on Friday night. I think it ultimately took about 2 hours and 6 minutes, some non-competitive at-bats from the Giants lineup. And we'll get into this Giants lineup very shortly. Just a group that I think has been relatively inconsistent so far. I think that you're seeing some worse swings at the bottom of the order than you've seen in a really long time. Giants are clearly missing Tyler Fitzgerald, their second baseman, who's on the injured list with chest contusion. They're clearly missing Gerard Encarnacion, who's been on the injured list since fracturing that ring finger during spring training, diving for a ball in the outfield. Casey Schmidt on the IL right now. I think that he could provide some depth for this lineup right now, specifically against left-handed pitching. But the bottom line is this: the Giants need some help on the offensive side of the ball, and they need to show up today against a really good pitcher in Joe Ryan, who's 2-2 on the season with a 2.93 ERA. Meanwhile, Logan Webb 4-2, 2.61 ERA. When I come back, my man Roger Munter, he writes the great There Are Giants Substack. We record our K-Raj podcast on about a monthly basis. Play a snippet from that episode, this week's episode, as we break down the Giants' hot start to the season, 24-15 right now, good for third place in this difficult National League West. I am Kerry Crowley. You're listening to Giants Warm Up here on KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.
It's almost time for hot dogs, peanuts, cold beers, and orange and black baseball. Our Giants warm-up rolls on the sports leader.
All right, we are back. Kerry Crowley helping get you set for Giants baseball on the radio coming your way. First pitch, 4:15 from Target Field in Minnesota. Chris Paddock pitched last night for the Minnesota Twins. Jordan Hicks threw last night for the San Francisco Giants. And while it was a pitcher's duel, we've got a better pitchers matchup today. Joe Ryan, the Bay Area's own former 39th round draft pick of the San Francisco Giants out of Drake High School back in 2014, going up against a fellow member of that 2014 Giants draft class. Joe Ryan, of course, did not sign. Logan Webb did, however, for the Giants. 4th round pick out of Rockland. Logan Webb has been the Giants ace since about the 2021 season. Second half of the year is when he took over the mantle from Kevin Gossman, who was the ace during the first half of that season. And he's not relinquished that title since then. Logan Webb has been outstanding today. He goes for the San Francisco Giants, a team that's trying to get back to 10 games over 500. Giants at 24-15 right now. So, during this segment, we're going to play a snippet from my K-Raj podcast. I tape this every month with my good buddy Roger Munter, who writes the great There Are Giants Substack. Roger, of course, been covering the Giants farm system and the San Francisco Giants Major League team for a long time and been doing it at a very high level. I love Roger's analysis, love his insight. And Roger, Giants 24-15 right now, and a team that's doing it without like a clear, obvious strength, right?
I do think that one thing they do exceptionally well, with a caveat, we'll put a little asterisk in this comment, is they have a tremendous bullpen.
Yeah.
And that is something we maybe predicted in the spring was going to be a strength of this club. And it's kind of fascinating to me the way they're doing it. I don't know about on your side of things, but a lot of my readers keep asking me about what do I think about the choice of having Birdsong in the bullpen rather than down in Sacramento starting. Now you can ask the same thing about Harrison. I really think it's fascinating that they are, after several years of basically using, looking at the pitching staff like it's the 40-man roster, not the 26-man roster. This team, it's obviously prioritizing having a cohesive unit with a shared identity, and it's important to put your best players on the Major League club if you're doing that, regardless of role. And I think they are doing that with Hayden Birdsong, with Kyle Harrison. They're getting the best 13 arms in the club and figuring out how to utilize them. And I think that's something this club really is doing differently this year than years past. And it's kind of fascinating to me how well it's working out so far.
Yeah, I think that you make a great point there. And what's interesting to me about the Birdsong and the Harrison dilemmas that have come up pretty early in the season is I think the Giants are able to ward off some of those conversations about where Birdsong and where Harrison potentially belong, because you've not only got a steady ace now in Logan Webb, but over the last really 3 weeks, Justin Verlander and Robbie Ray have stabilized this rotation. They've done a really good job. It was a rocky start to the year for Verlander, and he's still looking for career win number 263, robbed again in Chicago on Monday evening in just stunning fashion. But the Giants have won all of Robbie Ray's 8 starts. He's now thrown quality starts in each of his last 7 innings in 2 of those last 3 starts. This is the Robbie Ray that Farhan Zaidi traded for. This is the pitcher who the Giants envisioned he could be when they picked up that $50 million risk over a 2-year period where the Giants were taking on a pitcher coming off of Tommy John surgery, understanding that he would opt into the remainder of his deal, given how short his 2024 season was bound to be. So I think that that's really set this team up for success and enabled them to get through like a 17-game and 17-day stretch because they've got pitchers who at minimum are going 5 innings right now, save for Landon Roop, who's had a few short outings. But when you've got that happening, it enables you to preserve the arm of a Birdsong where he's not pitching every other day, preserve the arm of a Harrison where he's not pitching every other day. So if you get to a point in June or July where you say, you know what, we think these pitchers could be better out of the rotation, you could then send them down to AAA Sacramento, build them up for the second half of this season, and bring up some of the guys who are down at AAA right now who could theoretically fill in the bullpen, like a Sean Jelly, like a, say, Carson Wisenhunt may need his innings limited toward the end of this season. I think there are multiple pathways for the Giants to play it, and there are multiple pathways because of what the veterans at the front of the rotation have given them.
Yeah, and this is why it's important to have veteran arms at the front of the race. And one, you don't want to put all the pressure on the young guys who haven't been through it and don't kind of know how to navigate a full season successfully. You are helping, manage their innings for the long run, as you say. And you're creating depth of talent on the on the roster. I think Bob Melvin's usage of Hayden Birdsong has been really interesting and really pretty smart.
Yeah.
Set aside that horrible game in Chicago where basically and nobody. Well, they got in at like 3 a.m. I heard it, and having just done that myself, I feel for them in that game. Setting that aside, I mean they've utilized Birdsong really effectively. They've utilized the whole bullpen. Randy Rodriguez, a guy we've been talking about all year. Has saved this team countless times. Eric Miller, who was really the hero of the extra inning game the other night. This bullpen really is the strength. It is the thing you look at and say, this is what keeps them in games. And so the caveat I asked her that earlier is, of course, Ryan Walker, who's had some stumbles, who has had some command issues, and I think if you look at just statistically at his year, his strikeout rate has really plummeted this year, which is kind of the biggest concern with me. What's your, I don't know, level of concern? The Ryan Walker they did use heavily last year. He was really, really pushed into the red a lot last year. What's your concern with sort of where he is kind of stuff wise this year?
I'd say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably at a 5 or a 6 on Walker. And the reason I'm there is because last year when he was at his best, it felt like he could throw his fastball and his slider, just pinpoint them. Mm-hmm. And it was as if, Patrick Bailey would set up a target and Ryan Walker would not miss. Or if he did miss, it was 2 to 3 inches off the glove. Right now, it feels like Ryan Walker is 6 to 8 inches off the glove, a lot. And when your velocity is a tick down, and I think in Walker's case, for the most part, it is a little bit more 95, 96 than 97, 98, which is a lot of what we saw last season. It's, going to be a little bit easier to hit. With that being said, the reason I'm not at a 7, an 8, or a 9 on Ryan Walker is because his motion is so deceptive and his arm angle is unique. And we forget that 95, 96 is still pretty darn good. Like the crossfire delivery at 95 is not easy to hit. And the slider can absolutely get some silly swings and misses. And so even in the moments where Ryan Walker doesn't quote unquote have it per se, there's still a capability to get outs for Walker. Whereas, Camilo Doval, who's having a great season right now, he has been everything the Giants could have hoped and more at this point. When Camilo Doval has a day where he doesn't have it, he really does not have it. Like, you've got to get him out of that ball game. And I think the same has been true through the years of Tyler Rogers. He gives up 3 hits and you're like, well, he's not missing bats today. And he's not pinpointing that slider, the rising sinker that he throws from his arm angle. So you've got to get him out. With Walker, I don't feel as compelled to immediately remove him from the ball game because the quality of the stuff still isn't as bad as it could be for a pitcher going through a rough spell.
Yeah, I think, well, you bring up one of the reasons I'm not horribly concerned, which is that they have so much depth for into the games that it's not a catastrophe if you need to back off Walker for a little bit, if there's an IL stint coming in his future, something like that. Doval has been really throwing well. I think Rodriguez could close games. Eric Miller has looked outstanding. So they have a lot of depth for high leverage innings, which is fantastic. And the other thing is, that crossfire delivery, I think, there are 2 things that can cause pitchers, bullpen pitchers, to kind of go out of whack. One is health, and one is mechanics. In Walker's case, I think the mechanics are always so kind of tied to who he is and both his command and his stuff and his deception, where I don't think it's that difficult for him to get a little bit out of whack with just his landing foot, or, there's a lot of things going on in his motion that I think can come unglued for a little bit that probably he can kind of figure out and fix on the roll. As things go along. I think he's still Ryan Walker, but it may be a thing, just like what happened with Doval last year, where for a little while the mechanics just aren't there and you need to maybe turn to another option for a while. But they have so much depth there that I feel good about it, and I don't think there's any great concern with Walker kind of going forward this year.
And you mentioned this, but I think it bears repeating. The Giants have 6 or 7 guys down in the bullpen who I would trust in the 7th or 8th inning right now of a game that you're winning. And even Spencer Bivens, who is theoretically kind of the last guy down in the bullpen. I don't think that I would put Hayden Birdsong in that category or Kyle Harrison in that category because they're pitchers who are eventually going to start. Bivens is always going to stay in the bullpen for the Giants. He's a long man, someone they want throwing multiple innings. He's been pretty good Like Spencer Bivens as your seventh option shows you the depth that the Giants have. And by jettisoning Lou Trevino off the roster, I think that the quality of the stuff that the Giants have down in the bullpen now has been improved. It was clear Trevino wasn't the same guy, and I'm sure that was a very difficult decision for Bob Melvin because he was one of his guys, and it's only the first week of May when he loses his 40-man spot. But that was also the first performance-based transaction we've seen of the Buster Posey regular season era, where the previous guys who were moved off the roster or brought up from AAA Sacramento was all the result of injuries. Lou Trevino was the first player to lose a job based on performance this year.
Yeah, and I was a little surprised that it happened as quickly as it did. I thought maybe they'd give him, through May. But you bring up a great point. It was a stuff-based decision, and you look at this. I've made this point on my site over and over again because I know there were people who were surprised that Sean Jelly didn't have a spot in the bullpen and Tristan Beck didn't have a spot in the bullpen. Everybody who is in their bullpen is throwing a lot harder than Sean Jelly is right now. You look at Sean Jelly, all the numbers are available for AAA these days. He's averaging like 91, 92, 93 miles an hour on his fastball. There's nobody in the Giants bullpen that isn't several miles per hour beyond that. And that's what they've done in this bullpen. They have put it together. I mean, Kyle Harrison is here because he's throwing 97 again. He hit 97, 98, touched 98 in his last start in the PCL. We haven't seen that from him really since he was in Richmond. And once he got built back up to that point, they're like, this guy needs to be on a major league roster. Hayden Birdsong's throwing 98. I mean, they have some live arms down there, except for Tyler Rogers, who exists in his own sort of parallel universe of stuff.
Yeah, when you throw 12 miles an hour slower than the next guy in the bullpen, it's a little bit different. So I think you're right. That is the clear strength of this team. But I still find it interesting that they're winning games, that they're going into Chicago and taking 2 of 3, that they're going to New York against the Yankees and taking 2 of 3 with an offense that, to me, just lacks that clear every day. This is going to be the guy you rely on to bring the thump in this order. Jung Hoo Lee, for the most part, has been the guy who you can rely on for a key base hit, although he's been slumping a little bit lately. I guess slumping in Lee's terms, where he's probably hitting 270 over his last 2 weeks as opposed to 360, which is fine for the San Francisco Giants. But it's a long-term concern that I see, and I don't know, Roger, we're 2 months away from seriously talking major moves. But if you were to think about a move for the Giants, it's take one of your AAA pitchers and go out and get a bat. And I think that has got to be in the equation for this team at the deadline.
I mean, absolutely. They always looked like they were at least one bat short. And, losing Tyler Fitzgerald, who was doing really, really well, doesn't help. Lamont Wade's struggles don't help. We'll see what Gerard Encarnacion does when he comes back to this club. I think the expectations are high for a guy who really has no track record of success in Major League Baseball. So I can't look at him and think he's the savior. I think we're getting to the time in the calendar where they start saying, where are weaknesses? What do we need to shore up? And I agree with you. To me, it's a bat. It wouldn't be bad. Well, let me ask you this. I immediately say it would be nice to have a left-handed bat because this club is so right-handed, and yet they're so feeble against left-handed pitching. How do you square that nut?
Yeah,
for this club?
This is the real dilemma here, because you're right. Like, this team, in theory, needs a left-handed bat who can play first base if Lamont Wade Jr.'s production is going to mirror his production from the second half of 2024, which right now it is. This is almost a full season of Lamont Wade Jr. performing at a level that's not up to par with a major league player, which is unfortunate because I love watching his defense. Even in late game situations, I still trust him based off of what he did 4 full seasons ago when he was late night Lamont. That's how much goodwill he built up for the San Francisco Giants during that time frame. But I think that just bringing in a really good player, more so than thinking about right or left-handed, is probably the way that Buster Posey and Zach Manassian are thinking about it. We got so accustomed to the Farhan Zaidi era of mixing and matching and putting a lot of emphasis on the specific matchups that you're going to get on a day-to-day basis and in the division, where, there were days where the Padres rotation or the Dodgers rotation were left-handed heavy, so the Giants wanted a lot of right-handed bats. Roger, I go back to, we may have missed on a number of things this offseason. We may have gotten several things wrong about the San Francisco Giants, but one thing that you got right from the very beginning was this team would have benefited with a Josh Naylor trade.
Yeah, I was all aboard the Josh Naylor trade. There was a even smaller one that I think would not have been bad, and that was Nathaniel Lowe, who
Yeah.
the Nats picked up for like a 40-man reliever type arm. First baseman going pretty cheap. But I mean, I will say we missed really maybe spending money on Pete Alonso is really the move that would have put this club over the top, because that man is on a mission to show that he did not get the money he deserved. And maybe that was the move to make, but it's hard to read. There were all these rumors that Wade was on the trade market this year. They didn't move him. It's hard to really know how much of that was faith in the player and how much of it was just that they didn't see the move they liked on the board. I know there were rumors that they were interested in Paul Goldschmidt. I do think that they missed not shoring up that first base DH area of the roster, and that continues to be kind of a sore spot on the club now.
Yeah, it does. And it leads you to think about where they could get that offense from, because, does this lead you down the path of, okay, are you going to acquire someone over at first base? And what does that mean for Wilmer and Gerard down the road? Assuming that Gerard comes back and is the player who the Giants think he can be, which is probably, a 750 OPS with some thump in the 5th at the 6th spot in the order on certain days. And the other position that really worries me, and I know that they're not going to address it because they love the defense, but Patrick Bailey's production at the catcher spot has just been so subpar offensively that you essentially have a pitcher in the lineup, and they like to bat him 8th, but it means that, anytime there's a player on the injured list, like Tyler Fitzgerald is right now, the bottom of your order gets really thin really quickly. And I give Christian Koss credit because he's come up with some moments. Like there was the RBI that he had in Wednesday's game that's critical. He's had a few spots where he has looked like maybe he could reprise the Kelby Tomlinson role that Bruce Bochy liked. But at the same time, he's also run into some questionable decisions on the base paths. I think that he looks a little overmatched as a major leaguer. He's a quad A player, and there's nothing wrong with that. But the Giants right now, if they were to lose one more position player to the 10-day injured list, it would put them in a serious bind.
Yeah, the first base is a black hole. Catcher offensively has been a black hole. With Fitzgerald gone, second base, Koss and Wisely are guys you don't want manning that position for more than a week or so.
Yeah.
That's going to be a trouble spot. They really are kind of surviving offensively on the knife's edge of just trying to get enough. Now, Alyssa, your colleague, Grant Brisby, had a nice article recently where he talked about, the solution to the problems with left-handed pitching might just be the guys on the roster already who you expect to, live up to their career numbers. Matt Chapman really has not gotten going yet this year. Willy Adames is just starting to get going. Elliot Ramos has been kind of up and down and on waves. There are people on this team who you expect to hit better. I don't know if Patrick Bailey, I expect him to hit better than 160 or whatever he's been this year. But you really kind of just want him to hold serve. But the other parts of the roster really need to start kind of living up to the back of the baseball card, as they say.
And I do think that so much of this is going to depend on Adames and Ramos, because I have pretty good faith in Matt Chapman figuring this out. I think that he had a really good series at Wrigley, a lot of balls pulled and hit very hard exit velocities over 105 to the left side of the infield. And he fixes the launch angle a little bit. He's already got 7 home runs. So I don't know how much fixing needs to be done there, but I think that, a little less swing and miss, a little bit more contact, and you're seeing a batting average that reflects the career average for Matt Chapman, which is always going to be relatively low, but he packs so much power when he does make contact. And I think that's a big difference for the Giants. But Ramos is the player where over the last month, on the games that Ramos has contributed and done something offensively, the Giants have won those games. And there have been days where Ramos goes 0 for 4 with 2 strikeouts or goes 0 for 5 with a number of ground ball outs. And you're thinking, that's not very good. And that's going to hurt them when he's in the leadoff spot against lefties and he's in the 5th spot in the order against righties. He's a really critical player for this team to have success. And I do think that Adames is going to figure it out. I think that we've seen that over the last week to 2 weeks. The at-bats are just so competitive right now that he's on the verge of a breakthrough. Whereas with Ramos, he teeters on the border of competitiveness with some of these at-bats. I know that he had the 2 doubles in the extra inning win for the Giants against the Cubs on Tuesday, and maybe that can be a difference maker for him. But I do think that Ryan Presley was also tipping pitches at that moment. So I don't know. I think that Ramos sometimes looks like he's guessing up there in a way that Chapman and Adames don't necessarily look like they're guessing as much.
Well, those are 3 interesting guys in the lineup because all of them are low batting average, high power guys. Chapman adds in a ton of walks, which gives him a different element of value. But all those guys are going to run sort of low batting averages, but give you power. I think the big question with Ramos is, for me, is he going to start hitting left-handed pitching? Because last year against lefties, he was second only to Aaron Judge in Major League Baseball, which is why they have him up at the top of the lineup against lefties, and he has not hit them like that this year. I mean, not historically good, but just good. He hasn't mashed the lefties. You kind of expect him to, he's always going to have struggles with sliders from right-handers. I think that's going to be an issue that he'll have swing and miss with that, and he's really looking for mistakes with right-handers, but left-handers he should hit hard, and that's kind of what I'm looking for from him. I should say they do have 2 guys in the lineup who have been performing at 100% levels, and that's Wilmer Flores and Mike Yastrzemski. A player who so many people in the Giants fandom have 2 players really who the Giants fans have kind of wanted to send off to other places. Both of those guys have really been helping keep this offense afloat with some of their best performances of their Giants career so far. So hats off to Mike and Wilmer.
Yeah, I want to start with Wilmer, and just a quick note. This is the exact opposite season from Jorge Soler last year. So Soler had to be moved to the leadoff spot because he couldn't hit with a runner on base. Wilmer Flores has to have a runner on base for the at-bat to matter. The guy comes up leading off an inning, it's going to be an out. The guy comes up with 2 outs and no one on, it's going to be an out. But if you put a runner on second base and there's 2 outs, Wilmer Flores is going to bloop one into left center field or hit a dribbler single up the middle that has 87 hops before it reaches the center fielder. Somehow, some way, he stopped even Roger hitting the ball hard. That's something he was doing during the first 2 weeks of the season. It was like, okay, we didn't expect this version of Wilmer. He's actually not even that version of Wilmer anymore. He is the contact king with runners in scoring position, and his approach right now is paying off for the Giants in a way I just never could have seen. So I don't know if that wears off at some point, but they are riding that Wilmer wave as much as they possibly can.
You know what you really want to see this roster get to at some point is you would like to see this roster strong enough where Wilmer is the guy sitting on the bench waiting to pinch hit in the 8th or 9th inning with runners on base. That's really the role that you would like him to have.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the role he played with the Diamondbacks before he signed with the San Francisco Giants. I think this was 2019 maybe or 2018, but he was a Diamondback for one season. He played like 89 games, but still hit 18 home runs with them. And it was a situation where like, oh gosh, Wilmer's coming up in the 8th inning and he's going to yank one over the left field wall. And that is peak Wilmer Flores because they don't want to use him in the field. They don't. Honestly, if you ask Bob Melvin candidly, he wouldn't want to use him 4 at-bats a game. That's how much they think of Wilmer's conditioning and like making sure that they really set him up for success. Load management, to borrow the NBA term, is Wilmer Flores. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Mike Yastrzemski is providing the Giants with far more than they could have anticipated. So much so that Luis Matos has been forced into fewer at-bats than the Giants anticipated for him. And some of that was Matos' doing with the at-bat quality that he had early in the season. It was really poor in April. But a lot of it is just Mike Yastrzemski's been clutch for this team.
Yeah.
You want him up in the biggest moments. And there's an element to me when I watch Mike Yastrzemski right now of watching Brandon Crawford, where, hey, he might not have a pretty average and a pretty OPS at the end of the season, but he's going to come through for you in some significant moments. He's not fazed by a tough left-handed reliever out of the bullpen, or he's not fazed in a 7th inning situation where the Giants are down 3-2 and they need a big hit. Mike Yastrzemski's just kind of been there and done that from a baseball perspective. And I think he feels that type of confidence with this year's approach that he's had.
All of this kind of ties in together because I think the load management of Flores is preventing them from trying one maybe clear solution to their roster problems, which is if they felt comfortable playing Flores at first base, they would open up the DH for Matos, basically to run that 4-man outfield with Ramos or Matos or Yaz getting a day off and DHing, which would probably make the lineup work a little better, but I know that they're concerned about having Flores on his legs too much, which takes away that avenue, which is too bad because I think that would probably help a lot of different elements of the lineup.
You can dream if you're a Giants fan, but we have to say right now that 9 games over 500 sitting here on Saturday, May 10th, is a pretty good outcome for this team, all things considered. Of course, anytime you talk about baseball clubs through about 35, 40 games of the season, you want to talk about the ways that they can improve. You want to talk about the most optimistic scenarios for this team. So while it sounds in some regards like Roger and I can come down hard on the Giants, talking about maybe optimizing the rotation a little bit more, maybe getting a little bit more production out of this lineup, I think the big picture reality for the San Francisco Giants is that sitting here on Saturday, May 10th, this is about where they want to be. Of course, third place in the National League West is not where you think that you would be, 9 games over 500, but it's just the difficulty of their division. So the Dodgers on top, the Padres following closely behind, and the Giants at 9 games over 500 have put themselves to be in the mix. I appreciate Roger Munter for hanging out with me. You can catch the K-Raj podcast about every month wherever you get your podcast. Roger does a great job with it. There are Giants Substack that he writes. I would encourage everyone to subscribe. When we come back, we give you the lineup for today's ball game for the San Francisco Giants. We'll take a look at scores from Friday night around Major League Baseball, and then we will pivot and start looking ahead to Saturday's game. 4:15 first pitch from Target Field. It's the right-hander Joe Ryan throwing it for the Minnesota Twins. He's opposed by the Giants ace Logan Webb. I am Kerry Crowley. The show is Giants Warm Up. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.
to the show built for the orange and black family. This is Giants Warm-Up on KNBR, the sports leader.
We are back. Kerry Crowley hanging out with you Saturday afternoon, getting you set for Giants baseball. First pitch coming your way, 4:15 Pacific time, 6:15 local time out at Target Field in Minnesota. Joe Ryan, Bay Area native, will throw for the Minnesota Twins today. Logan Webb, the Giants staff ace, taking the ball for San Francisco. It's time to bring you the lineups for today's ball game. Here's what San Francisco Giants manager Bob Melvin has put out for your club. Mike Yastrzemski leading off and playing right field today. Yaz has 5 home runs, 17 runs driven in, 2 stolen bases, a nice .271 average and an .835 OPS. Giants getting very solid production at the right field spot with Yastrzemski taking the lion's share of the reps there. Willy Adames batting second today for the Giants. He'll play shortstop, 4 homers, 19 runs driven in, 2 stolen bases, a .224 average, and a .655 OPS for Adames, who started to show signs of life of late. The Giants hoping that Adames can get going, and he has given them reason for optimism so far during the month of May. Jung-Hoo Lee will bat third. He'll play center field for Bob Melvin's club. 4 homers, 23 driven in, 3 stolen bases for Lee, whose average is down now to .293. Still leads the San Francisco Giants, and his .820 OPS still very solid. Lee has cooled off for the last 2-3 weeks or so, was very hot in the middle of April, but the Giants hoping they can get the best version of Jung-Hoo Lee going, because we all saw he can be a catalyst that can carry an offense. Sprays the ball to all fields. So fun to watch when he's at his best. Of course, hit a big home run at Wrigley Field earlier this week. Speaking of home runs, Matt Chapman in the cleanup spot. He leads the Giants with 8 of them so far this season. You think about it, Saturday, May 10th, 8 home runs already for Matt Chapman. 30 is not out of the equation. It's been almost 20 years since the Giants last had a 30 home run hitter. Matt Chapman very much on his way right now. 24 runs driven in, 5 stolen bases, a .222 average for Chapman, but a .797 OPS. The OPS, always the number to keep in mind with Matt Chapman, who's been a career hitter down below .250. You're never going to get really more than about .240, .245 from Chapman, but the OPS can typically run in the .790 to about .830 range when he's going well, and it is right now for this ball club. Wilmer Flores, the designated hitter today, he will bat 5th. Flores, 7 homers, 33 driven in, 1 stolen base on the season for Flores, a .250 average, a .720 OPS for the man in the designated hitter spot today. Elliot Ramos in the 6th spot in the order today for the Giants. He's out in left field once again after making the error in Friday's ball game. 5 homers, 14 driven in, 3 stolen bases for Ramos, one of the Giants' streakiest hitters. He's been cold a bit of late, a .253 average and a .739 OPS. Lamont Wade Jr. down in the 7th spot in the order. Wade, the left-handed hitter, just 1 home run on the season. It came during that first road trip, the pinch hit appearance in Houston against the Astros. The Giants still waiting for Lamont to get going. 13 runs driven in on the season, a .154 average. Get this, a .512 OPS. They really need more production out of Lamont Wade right now. Gerard Encarnacion not due back for about 2 more weeks, still on the 60-day injured list. Casey Schmidt, his timeline about 2 weeks as well. This team needs production out at first base. And speaking of position where they need production, the catcher spot, Patrick Bailey batting 8th. He has not given the Giants a whole lot at the plate this season. No homers yet on the season for Bailey. 12 runs driven in, a .188 batting average. Believe it or not, that's come up over the last few weeks or so, but a .494 OPS. Bailey really struggling at the plate. And then there's Christian Koss in the 9th spot in the order for the Giants. No homers for Koss either. He'll play second base for the Giants today. 2 runs driven in on the year, a .209 average, and a .486 OPS. So 7, 8, and 9 spots, those are the big concerns for Bob Melvin's lineup right now. Wade with a .512 OPS, nowhere near his career totals. Bailey has just fallen off a cliff offensively since the first half of last season. Then Christian Koss trying to provide adequate production behind Tyler Fitzgerald, who's on the injured list right now with a chest contusion, fractured rib for Fitzgerald. He's hoping that he'll be able to come back within 2 weeks or so, but it has not been pretty for Koss at the plate right now. The Minnesota Twins lineup looks as follows today. Byron Buxton in the leadoff spot in the order. Buxton, big power hitter. When he's healthy, he can be one of the best hitters in Major League Baseball. 9 homers on the season for Buxton, 25 driven in, 8 stolen bases as well. He's just a force to be reckoned with. .279 average and .872 OPS for Buxton at the top of Minnesota's lineup. Trevor Larnach, the designated hitter today, he'll hit from the left side against Logan Webb. 5 homers, 18 driven in, a stolen base for Larnach, a .225 average, and a .656 OPS. Ty France, who's given the Giants trouble through the years, former Padre, former Mariner, he's over at first base, and he will bat third for Minnesota today. 3 homers, 21 driven in on the year, a 277 average for Ty France, 741 OPS. Career, he's been much better against left-handed pitchers than right-handed pitchers, of course, so Logan Webb could give him some trouble today. Brooks Lee, the switch hitter out of Cal Poly, former top draft pick of Minnesota, he's the cleanup man, playing second base today. 2 homers, 7 runs driven in on the season. Still struggling to get going early in his career, a 241 average and a 661 OPS. Now, here's the interesting juxtaposition, in my opinion, for this Minnesota versus San Francisco series. Carlos Correa in the 5th spot in the order today for Minnesota. He's the shortstop. 2 homers, 13 driven in on the season for Correa, a 229 average and a 597 OPS. So, while Giants fans may not be in love with the production that they've seen from Willy Adames at the shortstop position, you compare those numbers. Correa, 2 homers, Adames, 4 homers. Correa, 13 runs driven in, Adames, 19 runs driven in. Correa, a 229 average, Adames, a 224 average. Correa, a 597 OPS, and Adames, a 655 OPS. Right now, the Giants relatively happy that deal with Correa, 13 years, $315 million, did not go through a few years ago. He struggled to stay healthy in Minnesota, and instead they've given Adames 7 years, $182 million this offseason. Of course, they want Adames to provide much more production than he's given them, but right now, I think in the eyes of Giants evaluators, the decision makers at the top of the organization, things could be worse. And of course, Correa is still one of the most accomplished shortstops in Major League Baseball. He can get going in a hurry. He's still someone who's a force to be reckoned with at the plate. Adames, the same is true, but neither player living up to their potential so far this season. Let's continue with this Minnesota batting order. Willie Castro in the 6th spot in the order today for the Twins. He will play right field. Switch hitter will bat from the left side against Logan Webb. 1 homer, 5 driven in, a 215 average on the season, a 608 OPS. Royce Lewis gets the call at the hot corner today. He's down at the 7th spot in the order. Of course, former number 1 overall prospect in Major League Baseball. Lewis, former top draft pick of Minnesota as well. No homers, no hits on the season. He's been injured to start the year, an 091 OPS. He's struggling to get going, but Lewis is someone who, kind of like Byron Buxton, kind of like Carlos Correa, when he is going and at his best, he can absolutely carry an offense. We saw him do this last year with Minnesota, so you still have to pitch him extremely carefully, even though he's still looking for his first hit of the season. Harrison Bader down in the 8th spot in the order. Former Cardinals outfielder, former Yankees and Mets outfielder. Bader out of the University of Florida, the left fielder. 4 homers on the year, 16 driven in, 4 stolen bases. He's tough on the bases. He's been playing good baseball for Minnesota this season. A 289 average, 838 OPS, and he's a really good left fielder. Former center fielder, of course, in New York with the Yankees. Great range out there in left field. So this outfield defense for the Twins with Buxton in center and Bader in left, tough to beat in the American League. And then Christian Vasquez rounds out the order for Minnesota. He's the catcher today. No homers on the season for Vasquez, 2 runs driven in. And, here's something to keep in mind with Patrick Bailey. I've been hard on him all year on KNBR, on Giants Warm-Up, and on Sports Phone KNBR. He's got a 188 average. His opposition today in Christian Vasquez, a 176 average. The catcher spot across Major League Baseball is just not a position where you're getting any offense these days. This is true of just about every team outside of, say, the Chicago Cubs, who Carson Kelly, really one of the best hitters in all of Major League Baseball, of course, took Hayden Birdsong deep, but it was Kelly who struggled for years at the plate. He was involved in that Paul Goldschmidt trade where he went over from St. Louis to Arizona, was kind of one of the key pieces in that deal, never lived up to expectations down with the Diamondbacks. Kelly hitting the cover off the ball this year, but catchers around Major League Baseball struggling dramatically, and Patrick Bailey, Christian Vasquez, a microcosm of those struggles today in their respective lineups. So something to keep in mind when you're evaluating those players, those high-priced shortstops, Willy Adames and Carlos Correa. There's a lot of similarities between the Giants and the Twins, but one thing that's not similar, their respective records. The Giants 9 games over 500, 3rd place in the National League West. The Twins 1 game under 500 at 19-20 through 39 games so far this season. 4th place in a tough American League Central. Of course, the White Sox rounding out the division and the Rockies rounding out the division. So you're going to see a jumbled top of the American League Central. Not as many wins, of course, as the Dodgers and the Padres and maybe even the Giants will get to. 2-2, but nevertheless, a very competitive landscape in the Central this year. The Twins hope to become a part of that, of course, with the Tigers, with the Guardians, and with the Kansas City Royals, who've caught fire of late. So that's something to keep in mind as well. There are a number of games underway on Saturday afternoon. We will bring you those scores later on in Giants Warm-Up. But one thing that I want to do is just get caught up on what transpired on Friday evening around Major League Baseball. Of course, you know that the Giants lost 3-1 to Minnesota at Target Field. Giants had just 3 hits, 1 home run. It was Matt Chapman getting them on the board against Chris Paddock, who improved to 1-3 on the season, 4.76 ERA. Jordan Hicks took the loss for the Giants, 1-4, 5.82 ERA after his quality start against Minnesota on Friday evening. Some other scores from around the game of baseball. Pittsburgh Pirates won 3-2 over the Atlanta Braves, who are still 2 games under 500. Bailey Falter gets the win. Bryce Elder gets the loss. Elder, of course, has pitched for both of those organizations. The Detroit Tigers won 2-1 over Bruce Bochy and his Texas Rangers. How about the Tigers? 13 games over 500. Tarek Skubal was outstanding. Patrick Corbin couldn't match him 0 for 0. Skubal, now reigning American League Cy Young Award winner, 4-2, 2.08 ERA on the season. Patrick Corbin, who was so bad for all those years with the Washington Nationals, he's been okay with the Texas Rangers. In fact, he's been better okay, 2-2 with a 3.13 ERA on the season for Corbin. Cardinals routed the Nationals last night in our nation's capital, 10-0. St. Louis won that ball game as the Cardinals crept up over 500, 20-19. Eric Fetty gets the win. He moves to 3-3 with a 3.86 ERA on the season. Mitchell Parker takes the loss for the Nats, 3-3 with a 3.97 ERA. Wilson Contreras had a 2-run double to get that Cardinals offense jump-started in the early innings. Rays won 4-3 over the Milwaukee Brewers down at George Steinbrenner Field in the state of Florida. Sulcer with the win. Jared Koenig, Bay Area native, with the loss in that ball game, as Tampa took it 4-3 over Milwaukee. New York, the Mets, 7-2 winners over the Chicago Cubs. The Mets now 11 games over 500 as Clay Holmes picked up victory number 5 on the season. Clay Holmes transitioning out of the bullpen into the Mets rotation this season. He has been outstanding. 5-1, a 2.74 ERA. Meanwhile, for Cubs starter Jameson Taillon, the veteran right-hander, former Pirates pitcher, former Yankees pitcher, 2-2 with a 4.53 ERA on the season. Juan Soto, another home run in that ball game as he's starting to heat up for the New York Mets. Cleveland Guardians took it 6-0 over the Philadelphia Phillies, who've been hot of late. Jose Ramirez had a big home run, locked up the win for the Guardians. Gavin Williams takes the win in that one. He's 3-2 now with a 4.38 ERA. Aaron Nola, what a start to the season for the former LSU standout. Nola has been so good, the Phillies rotation, for so long, but 1-6 with a 4.89 ERA on the year. Giants took it to Nola earlier this year at Citizens Bank Park. Phillies still 6 games over 500, so a team to monitor in that NL East. It took 12 innings to settle things last night in Kansas City before the Royals emerged. They're now 8 games over 500 after a 2-1 win over the Boston Red Sox. Sean Newcomb took the loss in that one. Freddie Furman walked it off for Kansas City. The Chicago White Sox picked up victory number 11 on the season with a 6-2 win over the Miami Marlins. Jacob Amaya with a bunt single RBI in that one to help that White Sox offense. Max Meyer takes the loss. Young right-hander who's been really good in some outings for the Marlins this season. Still struggling with some consistency. 2-4, 4.37 ERA, but Meyer, a pitcher to watch this year down in the state of Florida. Houston Astros won 3-0 over the Cincinnati Reds. Hunter Brown continues his outstanding start to the season. Hunter Brown might be a Cy Young candidate when all is said and done in the American League. He's now 6-1, 1.48 ERA for the Astros this season. Nick Martinez took the loss, 1-4, 4.23 ERA for the Cincinnati Reds, and Josh Hader picked up save number 9. Wild one at Coors Field. That's no surprise. We say that just about every weekend here on Giants Warm-Up. Padres took it 13-9 over the Rockies, who fell to 6-32 on the season. Vasquez the win, sends Zatello the loss, and Robert Suarez, Major League Best 15th save of the year. A few other scores to tell you about as well. Another wild one in the National League West. At Chase Field, the Dodgers won 14-11 over the Arizona Diamondbacks. Shohei Ohtani hit a go-ahead home run in the 9th inning. Alex Vezia the win. Kevin Ginkel the loss. And Tanner Scott save number 9 for Los Angeles. The Orioles won 4-1 over the Angels last night. Sagano the win. Hendricks the loss. And Bautista the save. Blue Jays win 6-3 in Seattle over the Mariners, 6-3. Mariners still 6 games over 500 in the AL West. Good pitching matchup in that one as Kevin Gausman got the win, Luis Castillo the loss, and Jeff Hoffman got the save. And then, of course, in Sacramento last night, the Yankees took it to the A's, 10-2 winners. Aaron Judge had a double high off of the left field wall, hit 114 miles an hour off his bat. Jason Dominguez made some Yankees history last night. 3 homers for Dominguez, the 22-year-old outfielder, the youngest player with a 3-home-run game in a pinstripe uniform. 7 RBIs last night for Dominguez, as well as Will Warren got the win over the A's. I am Kerry Crowley. This is Giants Warm-Up. When we come back, more on Giants baseball. We'll get you set with a pitching matchup. Logan Webb and Joe Ryan will look at scores around Major League Baseball and the games already in progress today around the league. You're listening to Giants Warm-Up, KBR 104.5, 680, the sports leader.
Giants fans, first pitch isn't too far away as KNBR's Giants warm-up continues on the sports leader.
We are back. Kerry Crowley rolling with you on Giants warm-up, getting you set for Giants baseball on the radio. Coming your way at about 75 minutes. First pitch in Minnesota, 4:15 Pacific time, 6:15 local time at Target Field. How about that? Target Field and the Target Center in Minneapolis. Homes, of course, to the Minnesota Twins and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Warriors and the Timberwolves doing battle this evening over at Chase Center. And we've got a great lineup here this evening on KNBR for you. We will have, of course, the Giants' full broadcast of their game, and then we will have extra innings with Bill Lasky. Very much looking forward to his shows this weekend. Of course, after every Saturday and Sunday matchup of Giants baseball, you can listen to Bill talking ball, talking shop, bringing you up to date on all the latest around the organization. And then later on this evening, Dubs OT, John Dickinson, going live after the Warriors and the Timberwolves wrap up at Chase Center. Games 3 and 4 back in San Francisco. Of course, you'll have the Terry Francois two-step available to you on Monday evening. You can't do the traditional two-step, Giants game during the day, Warriors game during the evening. So things will be jammed up over there at Chase Center and down at Oracle Park on Monday night as the Giants are taking on the Diamondbacks. Their first matchup against Arizona this season. Justin Verlander looking for his first win. And Game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals between Golden State and Minnesota taking place at 7 o'clock over at Chase Center. So if you're headed out to Oracle Park on Monday evening, I would advise get there early and get there so you're in position to watch the Giants. And then if the Giants wrap up early, potentially get in position to go watch the Warriors across the street, one of those great bars or restaurants, walk over to Thrive City, check things out. Just a beautiful night in San Francisco on the slate for Monday. No Steph Curry, but the Warriors still very much alive in this series, proving they could win without him in Game 1. Of course, Curry poured in 13 points in 13 minutes, but Game 2, a completely different story. We will see what Steve Kerr has in store for Chris Finch and the Timberwolves tonight. So that's enough on basketball. We are back to baseball, keeping the main thing here on KNBR this afternoon. A look at Logan Webb, who gets the ball today for Bob Melvin's ball club. Webb, so good his last time out against the Colorado Rockies. Giants really needed a great start on Sunday to wrap up that homestand, and Webb delivered a 9-3 win for the Giants. It was win number 4 for Webb on the season. 7 innings, 6 hits, 1 run, just 2 walks allowed, and 6 strikeouts on that start for Webb. He's up to 56 strikeouts in 48 1/3 innings on the year. He's allowed 45 hits and 13 walks, a few more walks than we're accustomed to seeing from Logan Webb. He had 3 walks a few starts ago against the Milwaukee Brewers, 4 against the Yankees at Yankee Stadium, and 3 in his season-opening outing in Cincinnati against the Reds. But I think some of that is a byproduct of just trying different pitches this season. You're seeing Logan Webb use the cutter and use the four-seamer, pitches that were not in his arsenal last year, really whatsoever. He threw only 176 four-seam fastballs all season last year, only 84 cutters. He's already thrown 64 cutters this year. So it's a pitch that he is definitely experimenting with, using a ton against lefties. He's thrown 56 of those 64 cutters against lefties. It's a really good look for him because that sinker runs away from left-handed batters. You want the cutter running in, giving them a different look. And so far this season, it hasn't been the most effective pitch for Webb. Opponents hitting .385 against them. But I'll say this. When you're a starting pitcher and you've already got 3 solid pitches, and Webb absolutely has that in the sinker, the sweeper, and the changeup, you can get away with having a 4th pitch that maybe isn't as dominant as those first 3 if it can serve to keep hitters off balance. So it may not be a plus pitch just yet for Logan Webb, but it's something that forces left-handed hitters to be honest against the sinker action. So I think that you will see hitters struggle to catch up with that sinker because they're thinking about the cutter. He's able to use those pitches, tunnel them, throw off of one another, and ultimately keep left-handed hitters from leaning into that sinker and going the other way with that pitch if he's able to keep their barrels thinking about the cutter that could run in on their hands. That's always important for Logan Webb, but of course, the sweeper and the changeup, 2 great pitches, and the changeup this season been a very effective offering for Logan Webb. Opponents hitting just .235 against that pitch and slugging, perhaps more importantly, just .294 against that changeup. Webb has given up just 1 home run this season, a really impressive total, and he's hoping to keep that at bay but has allowed just 2 extra base hits on the changeup this season. So that's something to keep in mind as well. When he's throwing it, he's usually inducing soft contact. You can live with a grounder up the middle in a 2-out situation if you're attacking hitters and keeping them honest with the changeup. And that is something that Logan Webb certainly looks to do. So with that, I want to take a quick look at scores around Major League Baseball from games happening today. In our last segment, we brought you up to date on everything that was transpiring last night around the sport. Let's look at what's going on this afternoon. The game's already underway and the game's on the slate for this evening. Pittsburgh Pirates trailing 2-1 in the top of the 8th inning at PNC Park in Pittsburgh. Former Pirates closer who's lost that job, David Bednar, coming into the ball game against Atlanta as the Braves trying to claw their way back to 500 after the miserable start to the season. What were they? 0-7 on their season opening road trip against the Dodgers and the Padres. And as we've learned, it's about as difficult of a road trip as you're going to have this year. But the Braves trying to fight their way back in a very challenging National League East that doesn't have the depth of the National League West, but certainly has the top-end talent in the Mets and the Phillies. Bottom of the 8th inning in our nation's capital, where the Nationals trail the Cardinals 4-2 right now. C.J. Abrams at the plate against JoJo Romero, trying to change Washington's fortunes in that one. In fact, he might be on the road to doing so. Abrams just launched a double in that ball game, so the Nationals trying to threaten with a late comeback against St. Louis, which climbed up above 500 in Friday evening's game. Top of the 7th inning in Sacramento already, where they got underway earlier this afternoon as the Yankees are ahead 6-4 over the A's right now. Aaron Judge, 2 home runs in that ball game. Judge just continues to torch Major League Baseball. This guy's on a run that we really haven't seen, I think, since Barry Bonds. That is how good he is. Look, I know that Shohei Ohtani had a 50-50 season last year, but you look at Judge's overall numbers and what he's done at the plate. 2 for 4 today, 2 bombs. So the average is up to 399. He's flirting with 400, and it's May 10th. The on-base percentage is 489. That is Bonds-esque. The slugging percentage, 777 after 2 home runs today. He's got 14 on the year. That is how good Aaron Judge has been. Sitting at 14 on May 10th. The Giants' home run leader right now, who I think is having a great season, Matt Chapman, has 8 home runs, to put that in perspective. So he's just running away with the home run lead in the American League. And, of course, getting some help doing this business in Sacramento in that small Rayleigh, or I was going to call it Rayleigh Field. It's now Sutter Health Park, home of the AAA Sacramento River Cats as well. Bottom of the 5th inning in Tampa, where the Rays and the Brewers are tied 2-2 right now. Of course, the Rays playing this season at Steinbrenner Field. Of course, the AAA home, or excuse me, the spring training home of the New York Yankees. The Rays moved there this year because of Hurricane Milton and the roof damage that the Trop incurred over the course of the offseason. Some other games to tell you about later on this afternoon. Some really good pitching matchups around Major League Baseball on Saturday. It's not just Logan Webb and Joe Ryan going at it at Target Field, but some other good ones, including one that's about to get underway in Cleveland, where the Guardians will send Tanner Beebe to the mound against Ranger Suarez, who's coming off of a rough outing in his first outing this season for the Phillies. I think he lasted fewer than 3 innings in his first start, but Suarez, when he's at his best, can be among the best left-handed pitchers in baseball. If he's able to go deep into a ball game against Cleveland today, watch out for the Phillies and what that rotation can become this season. Tigers looking to move to 14 games over 500. They're sitting at 26-13 right now. Jack Flaherty on the hill. And Flaherty, ironically, a big free agent addition this offseason for Detroit. As he came back to the Tigers organization, he's 1-4 right now. Still been pretty good, a 3.79 ERA. It's just had some hard luck losses. Detroit, so good this season at Comerica Park at home. They're 14-3 right now, whereas the Rangers, 6-13 away from home. But the Rangers and Bruce Bochy will send Jacob deGrom to the hill. And look, this isn't the Jacob deGrom of old where he had like the 1.6 ERA with the New York Mets en route to winning a Cy Young, but deGrom really good so far in limited stints for the Rangers. 2-1 this season, a 2.61 ERA. He's not throwing 100, 101, 102 the way that he once was in a Mets uniform. But Jacob deGrom is still someone you don't want to see when you're opposing hitter, and I think that we should see a great pitching matchup in Detroit today. Speaking of great pitchers, Cole Reagan's going today for the Kansas City Royals, one of the best left-handers in the American League. 2-1, 3.79 ERA on the season. That fastball can ramp up 98 to 100. He'll face off against Garrett Crochet, the marquee offseason acquisition for the Boston Red Sox, who are sitting at 500 right now. Crochet 3-2, but a 2.02 ERA. Traded, of course, from the Chicago White Sox amid their rebuild. I have to imagine giving up players like Crochet not going to help their cause in the long term. Houston Astros will send Lance McCullers Jr. to the mound today against Brady Singer of the Cincinnati Reds. McCullers Jr. making his long-awaited season debut, someone who's battled a ton of elbow issues through the years. Excited to see him back and healthy. The White Sox take on the Marlins. Smith against Cabrera in that ball game. Mets playing host to the Cubs. It's McGill, former Met, taking the mound current Met taking the mound against Brad Keller going for the Chicago Cubs today. Bradley Blaylock gets the call for the Colorado Rockies as they play host to the Pittsburgh Pirates. Colorado 6-32 to start the season. How about that? Corbin Burns down in Arizona this evening against Dustin May. Burns 1-1 on the season for the Diamondbacks. We've got the Angels and the Orioles, and then the Mariners and the Blue Jays in action as well. I am Kerry Crowley. This is Giants Warm Up. On the other side, our official Giants pregame show will begin as we get you set for Giants baseball on the radio. Logan Webb up against Bay Area native Joe Ryan today as the Giants look to follow the script that they set out at Wrigley Field earlier this week, where they lost the first game of a series and then came back and won each of the last two. Logan Webb, the tone setter for your San Francisco Giants. He's on the mound a little over from an hour from now. You're listening to KNBR 104.5 680, the sports leader.